So you sit down at your computer, you open Gmail.
Right, the classic morning routine.
Exactly. And you scroll through this massive, completely convoluted email thread. You highlight the text and you hit copy.
Yep.
Then you open a new tab. You navigate over to Claude. You paste the text. You type out your prompt. You wait.
And wait.
And wait, yeah. Then you copy the output. You open Notion. You paste the output. You switch back your email, and you just repeat the whole process.
It's exhausting just listening to it, honestly.
It really is. We've collectively accepted this incredibly manual, just friction-heavy loop as the standard way to interact with artificial intelligence right now.
Yeah, we really have.
And it feels like you're doing, cutting-edge work.
Okay.
But when you look closely at the actual mechanics of your day, your workflow is profoundly bottlenecked by your own two hands.
Oh, the irony is just striking when you consider the raw capability of the models we're actually using here. I mean, we are treating a high-dimensional reasoning engine like a glorified clipboard manager.
A clipboard manager, exactly.
Right. You're essentially using a supercomputer, but you're constraining its input and output to whatever you can manually shuttle back and forth across different browser tabs.
It's like the Michelin star chef analogy.
Oh, I love that one.
Yeah. So imagine you hired this world-class culinary genius to cook in your kitchen.
Okay.
But instead of letting them just work, you force yourself to walk back and forth to the grocery store for every single individual ingredient they need.
Right. Like, oh, you need salt. Let me run to the store.
Exactly. Onion? I'll be right back. You basically become the single point of failure in your own kitchen.
Yeah, it completely defeats the purpose of having a world-class chef in the first place.
It really does. So today's deep dive is about entirely eliminating that bottleneck.
That's the mission.
Right. The source material we're analyzing today provides this masterclass on a very specific architectural framework.
Yeah, Model Context Protocol, or MCP Connectors.
Right, MCP Connectors. And we are exploring a playbook on how to plug Claude Cowork directly into your actual workspace.
We're talking about establishing direct pipelines to Gmail, Google Sheets, Google Drive, Notion, and Canva.
All the heavy hitters.
Yeah.
But before we get into the actual workflows, I think we really need to clarify what an MCP connector actually is, because, the term gets thrown around a lot right now.
Oh, constantly.
Yes, and it's not just a standard API webhook where you ping a server and get a static payload back.
No, not at all. And that distinction is vital. A traditional REST API is highly rigid. It's like passing a note under a door.
Okay, passing a note.
Yeah, you ask a very specific pre-formatted question, and the system slides a very specific rigid answer back under the door.
Right.
But Model Context Protocol is this standardized mechanism designed to let AI models understand the shape, the structure, and the context of external data securely.
Securely being the operative word there.
Exactly. So instead of sliding a note under the door, an MCP connector is like giving the AI a secure temporary key to walk into a specific room.
Oh, I like that.
Right. It can look around, it can read the documents on the desk, understand the relationships between different files, and pull exactly what it needs.
And it does all that without, ingesting all of your company's data permanently into its core training weights, right?
Exactly. It's temporary and scoped.
That conceptual framework is essentially the mission of this deep dive.
Yeah.
By the end of our conversation, you're going to understand how to build an architecture where Claude independently accesses your workspace, reads the required context, processes the data, and drops the finished output exactly where it belongs.
Entirely skipping the copy-paste trap.
Entirely skipping it.
Yeah.
But to actually stop acting as the manual delivery person for the AI, there's this fundamental paradigm shift required in how we interact with the interface itself.
Yeah, the sources draw a very hard definitive line between Claude Chat and Claude Cowork.
Right, because chat interfaces are what trained us to think in terms of these isolated microtasks.
Right.
You throw a document into the window, you ask for a summary, the session ends. It's a stateless interaction. You literally start from scratch every single time.
And Cowork, on the other hand, is designed for stateful, connected workflows.
Stateful, right.
It expects to use multiple tools in sequence to achieve a structured, complex outcome, which actually leads to the core thesis of the playbook we're looking at.
Which is?
The most significant upgrade you can make to your workflow is not writing a more elaborate prompt. It is building a dedicated system around the prompt.
Okay, so the prompt basically becomes the ignition switch, not the engine itself.
That's a perfect way to put it. If the prompt is the ignition switch, the external databases, the trackers, and the reference files are the cylinders and the fuel lines.
Right.
You have to lay the tracks before the train can run. You establish the data sources and map out the destination architecture well before you ever hit generate.
Okay, let me push back on the practicality of that for a moment, though.
Sure.
Because if I have to spend, I don't know, 3 hours building out custom databases, configuring spreadsheet trackers, and mapping output destinations just to get the AI to write a single blog post or summarize an email thread, haven't we defeated the entire purpose of automation?
I hear that a lot.
Right. Because the time it takes to build a digital assembly line seems vastly longer than just doing the task manually.
Well, you're looking at the return on investment for a single execution rather than the lifetime value of the system.
Okay, fair point.
Yes, engineering a proper data pipeline takes upfront capital in terms of your time. But once that architecture is locked in, the AI operates autonomously.
So it's an upfront cost.
Exactly. You are not building a system to summarize one email thread. You are building an assembly line that can process your inbox every single morning for the next 6 months,
Wow.
without you ever copying and pasting a single line of text again. The assembly line is the prerequisite for autonomy.
That makes a lot of sense. But before we start sketching out the blueprints for these assembly lines, the sources highlight this diagnostic step that almost everyone skips.
Oh yeah, and it leads to massive cascading workflow failures.
Right. People authorize their tools, they build the pipeline, and just fire off a massive prompt, assuming the digital pipes are all perfectly connected.
Which completely ignores the reality of OAuth tokens and session management.
Exactly.
API authorizations expire. Permissions are quietly revoked by back-end security updates all the time.
Yep. So the source material mandates a very specific diagnostic prompt before initiating any complex workflow. It's basically the golden rule of MCP.
And it's so simple.
It really is. You just type, can you confirm which connected tools are available in this cowork workspace?
That's it. It forces the AI to actively ping every connected node and verify its read and write access.
It's like the pre-flight checklist.
Exactly, because if it cannot reach Notion, or if the Google Drive token expired overnight, you really want to know that before the system spends 3 minutes analyzing your inbox and then tries to push a payload to a dead endpoint.
Nobody wants that.
Yeah.
And that diagnostic check brings us to the underlying cost of these workflows, which the text refers to as the invisible tax.
Yes, the invisible tax.
Right. When you transition from a simple chat interface to an autonomous cowork workflow, you are fundamentally changing the scale of compute power you consume.
Absolutely, because in the user interface, it feels identical.
Right.
You
Yeah.
type one sentence, you hit enter. But we need to look under the hood at what that one sentence actually triggers.
Yeah, if I tell the system to, say, review my emails, check the project tracker, draft a briefing, and save it, that is an enormous chain of operations.
It's huge. Let's break down the mechanics of that invisible tax. First, the AI has to parse your natural language and translate it into specific API calls. Then it pulls the raw data. Let's say it pulls 50 recent emails. That raw text burns through thousands of tokens in your context window.
Just to read them.
Just to read them. Then the model has to hold all of that text in its active memory, synthesize the information, formulate a plan for the next step, format the output to match Notion-specific block structure, and finally push it via another API call.
So the user sees one simple prompt, but the system is actually executing like 7 distinct computationally heavy steps.
Exact.
It is burning through tokens, API rate limits, and server processing time.
Ah.
It's like sitting down at a restaurant and ordering a multi-course tasting menu.
Oh, that's a good analogy.
Right. You only spoke one sentence to the waiter, but back in the kitchen, they are burning through a massive amount of resources, ingredients, and staff hours just to make it happen. You have to be deeply aware of the kitchen's capacity.
You do. And the sources point out that for basic diagnostic tests or light daily workflows, a standard tier like Claude Pro is generally sufficient.
Okay, that's good to know.
But the moment you start asking the system to ingest massive reference folders from Google Drive or process hundreds of rows in a spreadsheet, you will hit those context limits and rate limits incredibly fast.
So it's about knowing your limits.
Right. Understanding the token density of your tasks is essential. If you are doing heavy data lifting, upgrading to a tier with higher compute thresholds like Claude Max becomes a structural requirement, not just a luxury.
Okay, so now that we understand the protocol, the mandatory pre-flight checks, and the compute limits, let's look at the first architectural blueprint provided by the sources.
The daily business briefing.
Yes, designed to solve a universal problem, the sheer dread of the morning inbox.
We all feel it.
We really do. So to build this machine, we are connecting three specific tools: Gmail, Notion, and Google Sheets.
And the way this architecture separates data visualization from data storage is critical here.
How so?
Well, you use Notion as the primary database, the briefing hub. This holds the heavy text payload. This is where the long-form sections live, like top priorities, missed follow-ups, important updates.
Okay.
But you use a Google Sheet strictly as a tracker. It does not hold the text of the emails.
Interesting.
It only holds metadata, the date, the total count of urgent emails, and a binary status check of whether the workflow even ran.
See, I have to ask about that. If the comprehensive, fully formatted briefing is already sitting securely in Notion, forcing the AI to make an entirely separate API call to update a basic Google Sheet with metadata seems like a waste of those precious tokens we just talked about.
I can see why you'd think that.
Right, like why not just keep everything housed in Notion?
Because of how we interact with different data structures over time.
Okay.
If you are managing AI agents, you require a high-level telemetry dashboard. You do not want to load a heavy, text-dense Notion page just to check if the workflow executed successfully this morning.
Oh, I see.
And you definitely don't want to open 20 individual Notion pages to spot a macro trend in the volume of urgent client emails over the last month.
That'd be a nightmare.
Exactly. The spreadsheet is your dashboard. The Notion database is your filing cabinet. Decoupling the high-level metrics from the deep data storage is a fundamental principle of systems architecture.
You separate the heavy lifting from the at-a-glance monitoring.
Exactly.
That makes perfect sense. Okay, so once that architecture is set up, the execution relies on a single master instruction. You do not conversationalize this process.
No, absolutely not.
You don't say, hey, can you check my email?
Yeah.
And then wait for a response to say, okay, now format it.
Right. You inject the entire operating manual at once. The source provides a highly structured prompt that acts as a deterministic script.
It sets the boundaries.
Yes. It defines the constraints review 48 hours of Gmail. It defines the extraction logic, isolate urgent items, and team updates, ignore newsletters.
Thank goodness for ignoring newsletters.
Seriously. Then it defines the routing push, the full report to the Notion database, push the metadata to the Sheets tracker. Finally, it defines a safety protocol draft replies in Gmail, but strictly do not send them.
Do not send them. That is so important.
It's very important.
So you feed the system the entire state machine in one go. That is a brilliant defensive workflow. It takes the chaos of inbound communication and structures it autonomously.
Defense is great.
It is, but defense is only half the game. What if the listener needs to play offense? Like, how does the system architecture change when we need Claude to actually generate new creative assets from scratch, like marketing briefs or product specs or campaign concepts?
That requires transitioning to the second major workflow in the playbook, the content brief builder.
The content brief builder.
And for this, we upgrade the tool stack. We are going to use Google Sheets, Google Drive, Notion, and Canva.
Canva, nice.
Yeah, but the fundamental difference between the daily briefing and the content builder is state management.
Meaning what, exactly?
Well, the Gmail workflow is time-based. It just looks at the last 48 hours. The content builder requires a specific, explicit trigger to prevent the AI from burning compute on unfinished ideas.
And that trigger is built directly into the Google Sheets tracker. You might have a massive backlog of 50 raw, half-baked ideas logged in that spreadsheet.
Right.
But the master instruction explicitly restricts the AI's attention.
Right.
It is only allowed to process a row if the status column strictly matches the exact string ready for brief.
That status acts as a Boolean switch. Until the human flips that switch, the AI ignores the row completely.
But once triggered,
the workflow addresses the single biggest problem in generative AI, the blank page hallucination.
oh, the sources are adamant about this rule. Claude should never write from a blank topic.
Never.
Because if you trigger the workflow with just the topic, say Q3 marketing campaign, the model relies entirely on its foundational training weights.
Right, and it will just give you a generic, statistically average output that sounds like literally every other AI-generated post on the internet.
Exactly. We've all read those posts. So to counteract that regression to the mean, the architecture mandates a context injection step.
Right. Before generating a single word of text, the system is routed to a specific Google Drive reference folder.
And this is where the MCP connector's ability to securely read external data becomes incredibly powerful.
It's a game changer.
You populate that drive folder with the actual DNA of your brand. You upload your audience personas, rigid style guidelines, postmortems of past successful campaigns, technical product specs.
All of it.
Yeah. And the AI reads those files to calibrate its weights toward your specific context before it begins drafting.
Which makes all the difference.
It's the difference between asking a random stranger on the street to write an ad for your company
Right.
versus handing a brilliant new hire your company's entire employee handbook, your brand guidelines, and an archive of your most successful past campaigns and saying, study this first, then write the ad.
The output quality is categorically different. It is injecting high-fidelity constraints into the model.
Yeah.
It reads the historical data to understand your brand voice. Then it drafts a highly structured brief in Notion complete with core insights, main angles, and hook ideas. From there, it passes the core concepts via the Canva connector to generate 3 distinct visual variations. Then it loops all the way back to the spreadsheet and updates the status to needs review.
The sheer amount of context switching the system handles autonomously is staggering to me.
It really is.
It pulls constraints from Drive, drafts the payload in Notion, pushes visual parameters to Canva, and updates the telemetry in Sheets, all from a single status change.
All autonomously.
Now, the playbook points out that you can fully automate the execution of these systems.
Yes, you can.
You can set the daily briefing to run automatically at 8:00 a.m. every weekday, or have the content builder constantly listen for that ready for brief trigger. But there is a massive hardware caveat here regarding scheduled tasks, isn't there?
There is, and it's a big one. The scheduled executions rely on a localized trigger.
Okay.
The source specifies that these tasks only run while the host computer is awake and active. The MCP connectors require an active local environment to authenticate the secure handshakes and process the oath tokens.
That makes sense.
So if your laptop is asleep in your backpack, the 8 a.m. workflow will not fire. The system is physically tethered to the machine's sleep state.
That is a critical operational detail for anyone trying to set this up.
Absolutely.
But assuming the machine is awake and the workflows fire autonomously, how do we mitigate the risk of catastrophic output?
Good question.
I mean, we are letting a large language model interact directly with our email drafts and our public-facing design tools. How do we stop it from hallucinating a terrible email to a client or publishing a wildly off-brand graphic?
This is exactly why every single workflow in the playbook terminates in a mandatory human review state.
Human review.
Right. The architecture is designed for autonomous generation, but strictly human-in-the-loop authorization.
Okay.
You must review the Gmail draft before you click send. You must open the Notion brief and verify the Canva concepts for accuracy, brand voice, and core insights before anything gets published. The AI drafts, the human decides.
Okay, but let me ask the ultimate skeptical question here.
Go for it.
If I am still mandated to sit down, read every drafted email, verify every Notion brief, and tweak every Canva design, where is the actual leverage?
I completely understand why you'd ask that.
Right. Am I not just shifting my labor from drafting to editing? Am I actually saving time?
You are shifting the labor, yes, but those two cognitive loads are not remotely equal.
How so?
Think about the psychological friction of a blank page.
Oh, it's the worst.
Staring at a blinking cursor, trying to recall specific brand voice guidelines from memory, searching for the right Canva template, and organizing raw data into a coherent structure, all of that requires immense executive function.
It really does. It's exhausting.
Right. But reviewing a highly structured, contextually accurate draft and making minor semantic tweaks, that requires a fraction of that cognitive energy.
That's a really good point.
The automation eliminates the friction of initialization. You are no longer doing the heavy lifting of generating. You are steering the ship.
You eliminate the initialization friction. I love that. Well, we have covered a tremendous amount of ground today.
You really have.
We started by diagnosing the extreme inefficiency of the manual copy-paste loop. We broke down the mechanics of model context protocol connectors, how they provide secure, temporary keys to your data rooms rather than just pinging a static API.
Yep.
We analyzed the invisible compute tax of multi-step prompts and token limits. And we mapped out the architecture for both a defensive inbox system and an offensive content generation pipeline.
And the source material provides a very clear directive for your next steps. Go into Claude Cowork. Authorize at least 2 MCP connectors. Choose one of the architectures we explored today.
Just one to start.
Right. Build the tracker, establish the database, and run the pipeline manually from start to finish. Critically, document the exact points in the architecture where your manual approval is required. Map out your safety net before you rely on the automation.
Build the tracks, then run the train.
Yeah.
As you go off to set up these systems, I want to leave you with something to consider. We talked about handing the keys to the pantry over to a Michelin star chef. You are building systems where the AI handles the fetching, the reading, the drafting, and the designing across multiple platforms.
Right.
Your sole function becomes the final taste test and authorization. But if that is the case, at what point does your core identity shift entirely from being a creator of work to being a manager of a digital AI workforce?
Oh, wow.
And if your primary role is now management rather than execution, what new operational skills do you need to acquire today to effectively lead a team of autonomous agents? Something to think about. Until next time.